I'm going to try not to make this video too long. I'm going to try to get straight to the point. It's about the case of Lindsay Sandiford. She's a British woman, a grandmother, 58 years old, who is currently in jail in Indonesia on a drug smuggling charge. Anyway, I've just seen news, and the headline is this. There's a few different sources, but this one's from The Independent. British grandmother Lindsay Sandiford faces execution by firing squad in Indonesia. The latest development is that she's had to sign a document which she believes is her own death warrant, confirming that she will be executed. She can't read it because it's in Indonesian, so she doesn't know what it says. But apparently the expiry date for a clemency appeal passed 5 months ago. And also, given the fact that 5 foreigners were executed, I think it was last week, that is the trend at the moment. The new president, Joko Widodo, has said that he is not going to show clemency in drug cases. I have to say, the death penalty is always a subject that makes me uncomfortable. And this case particularly makes me uncomfortable, and I want to emphasise this is not because she's British. It would make me uncomfortable if she was Indonesian as well. So just to give you a bit of background, she was convicted of smuggling cocaine into Bali in 2013. But she claims that she was forced to do it by a gang who threatened her 2 sons. They're in their 20s. This woman's 57. This gang threatened to kill her sons if she didn't do it. Now, I have to say, I think that reason is a bit flimsy. I think if a gang was threatening her in that sort of way, with that sort of extortion, what I don't understand is why she didn't report that to the police in the UK. Apparently this gang was operating in the UK and threatened her here. She's from Redcar in North Yorkshire. So I'm dubious about her explanation, but I don't know. I figure her explanation is dubious. But there's a few things about this case that makes me uncomfortable. Signing a document when you can't understand the language is clearly wrong. Surely any fair system, when we literally talk about life and death, the very least should be able to understand what she's saying, what she's signing. Because otherwise they are absolutely taking away a basic human right. Now I know there'll be people watching this who will say she's a drug pusher, she deserves no mercy and so on. Just to make my position clear, and I believe I made an initial video on this, I'm not saying she's innocent. And if she is guilty, and if her explanation about the drug gang or the gang is a very flimsy one, I do think she should be punished. But I'm completely against the death penalty for drug smuggling cases, and I want to explain why. I'm under no illusions as to the damage that drugs do. They cause massive misery. They fuel crime. They fuel a lot of problems. But number one, from a practical point of view, killing drug smugglers isn't going to change the problem. In fact, what it might do is push up the value of street drugs, because there'll be fewer dealers left. So those that do get under the net will actually become more powerful, because they'll have less competition. So if this new administration thinks that simply killing them is going to work, I don't think it will. China executes more people than any other country, but doesn't stop crime there, and it certainly doesn't stop drug crime in China. So this idea that the death penalty is a deterrent, I think, is misleading. If Lindsay Sandiford is guilty, it didn't stop her from taking drugs. Now, who could honestly say that they don't know that Southeast Asia generally is very strict when it comes to drugs? No one can really say that they don't know that. So my point with that is, clearly these sort of harsh measures aren't a deterrent. Drug lords are ruthless people, they don't care. And I agree they should be punished, but a thing about drug smuggling is I don't believe it's in the same category as murder or terrorism. And this is why. I believe that drug users have responsibility, with the exception of people being spiked, or children having it hooked on them by adults. I believe that adults, free-thinking adults, are entirely responsible if they choose to take drugs. So, from that point of view, drug mules are just part of the problem. So executing them is like kind of cutting a foot off a lizard. It's not going to kill the problem. And it just makes me uncomfortable that no one seems to be taking her claim seriously. I mean, I think it might be dubious, but even the prosecution in the initial trial were calling for, I believe it was 15 years in prison. They weren't even calling for the death penalty. But Joko Widodo wants to show he's tough. He wants to show he's going to show no clemency. I guess in Indonesia the president can have a say on that. He's going to show no clemency to foreign drug smugglers. Maybe this is because Indonesians are being executed, so he doesn't want to show that he's being sympathetic to foreigners or something like that. And I want to make it clear, I don't believe this is a bias on my part, because I'd be saying exactly the same things if we were talking about an Indonesian here, or for anyone from any country. I don't believe people should be executed over drug crimes, unless they're drug lords who are responsible for ordering killings and that sort of thing. Drug lords absolutely should be punished, but this woman is not a drug lord. That's an important thing to note. She's a mule. She's very low down in the scale of things. So I don't understand why it is that these countries always execute drug mules, and it seems to be rarely that it's actual drug lords that are executed. And I'm not saying that would be right either, but it's like they're taking people way down the scale rather than the really big powerful players in this business. I still think her, if she had problems, I don't understand why she didn't go to the police in the UK. There's another factor which I'm uncomfortable about. The Foreign Office is refusing to pay $38,000 for a defence team. Now, I want to be clear about this. This is not $38,000 to get her freed. It's $38,000 for a defence team. And I think that's an absolute abomination. 38,000 is nothing when you consider the budget of the United Kingdom. This is a British citizen in trouble, so the Foreign Office has a responsibility. Whatever people think of her, that is their moral responsibility to be there for British citizens. That's not to say they should say she's innocent and tell the Indonesians to free her. I mean, it's their country. If you're Indonesian, it's your country. And certainly they would have every right to punish her if she's guilty, just like we would punish foreign criminals. But the death penalty is state-level killing. That's what it is. So if you're killing her to say that the drug trade is wrong, then all that's doing is saying that Indonesia believes in killing people. State-level killing. So I'm very uncomfortable with that. If she was a terrorist who'd murdered dozens of people, and she was proud of it, or she was a serial killer or a severe child molester, I wouldn't have a great deal of sympathy. But I honestly don't think that drug mules are in the same category. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to trivialize what they do. It's wrong. If you bring drugs to any country, but if you bring drugs especially to a country that's known for very tough penalties, not only is that stupid, but it's obviously wrong. You're contributing to a vile trade. And yeah, drugs do destroy lives, but I don't believe that a drug mule is directly responsible for the choices that a drug user takes. And the fact that her argument seems to be completely ignored. Now, I don't know if that was brought up in the trial. I hope it was. But I'm not convinced that the Indonesian system is that fair, because I believe there is a politically motivated issue here, which is based on trying to get guilty convictions in order to look tough. I believe that's what it's about. I don't believe the approach that a country like Indonesia takes to drugs is based on fairness. I believe it's based on purely trying to look tough, and I do believe that is the sole thing, because the drug trade is a big problem and they're trying to show that they're doing something about it. But this is really and I'm speaking as someone who, I don't regard myself as left wing on crime. Again, I emphasize, she should be punished, but the death penalty is too far. It's murder. Seriously, what's the difference between shooting someone in a firing squad and murdering them on the street? I don't see any difference, except one is legal and one isn't. It's the state dictating that's, and this isn't just for Indonesia, this is for any country that does it, dictating that this person has done something bad, so we somehow have a right to take a human life. And I have a big problem with that. I think I made a video on the death penalty not so long ago, and I said that there are some crimes whereby the death penalty is understandable, although I still generally disagree with it. But if you have like a child murderer or a callous terrorist, like the likes of Anders Breivik, just for an example, it's very, very difficult to feel sympathy with someone like that. But in a case like this, I don't believe this is a black and white case. I'm not saying that she wasn't caught with the drugs. That's obviously clear cut. She was caught. And I'm not saying that she didn't know she was carrying them. She hasn't even denied that. But either her argument about this gang bribing her is a very very big excuse that she's making, or if it is the truth, I'm very concerned that everyone has ignored that, including the Foreign Office. Now, the Foreign Office shouldn't be telling the Indonesians to release her, but at the very least they should be offering her the money. And some people will say, well, she's a criminal. We don't know that for sure, actually. The number of miscarriages of justice in these cases is very high, and I do believe it's a flawed system that is based on assumption of guilt rather than looking at all the facts. And I don't believe all the facts have been looked at in this case. And again, it's nothing to do with her being British. I would be saying exactly the same thing if she was an Indonesian. I believe this is politically driven. I believe it's Joko Widodo trying to show that he's tough on foreigners. I believe that's what it's about, basically. Another thing about the death penalty, what you're doing with that is putting the family of the executor under unimaginable pain. Now, people will say the criminal has put the victims under unimaginable pain, although I still believe that drug smuggling is not a direct crime against drug users. I don't believe it is, because I believe drug users have responsibility. I know that's maybe a controversial position to take, but I don't believe that drug smuggling is in the same category as killing someone. And maybe people will say I'm ignorant about drugs. I'm not saying that. I hate drugs and I think they cause misery in the world, but I just don't believe it warrants the death penalty. I believe an appropriate sentence would be a custodial sentence. But people will say, well, it's their country, their laws. I understand that, and I'm not saying that Indonesia should change its laws. I'm just saying I'm uncomfortable with it, and I do think it's flawed. So let me know your thoughts, but I would ask that before you do, don't make sweeping statements. Look at the specifics of this case. I'll put a link under the video. Don't make sweeping statements like criminals deserve to die or something like that. I would ask you, anyone watching this, at least look at the case specifically before passing judgment on this video or the general case. I mean the general issues.